privilege to be here. I'm so glad to be here. I've really just thank the Lord and so grateful for the opportunity to come back to this very special place to me and to, of course, Beverly, my wife. Wish she could be here today, but we have 3 teenagers at home, so one of us has to be a parent. This is such a special place for us. You know, we were called in Florida, but we were trained and equipped in New Orleans, Louisiana. And there are so many places on this campus where I met with God. And He did a work on me and did a work in. Take you to some of those places. This curb right outside the Level Center behind the cafeteria where I sat in the rain one day and wept before the Lord. And this chapel is one of those places where I met with God week after week after week and heard Him speak and saw Him do a work in me. I'm glad you're here in chapel today, too. When I was a student, I had Introduction to Preaching, a proclamation, at 9 a.m. with Dr. Harold Bryson. And we met over across the parking lot in the new building. And there was a habit of the students to say, because I believe in those days chapel was at 10, and the habit of the students was to say, "Now, Dr. Bryson, who's in chapel today?" And, of course, you know why you ask that question, because you're making a decision whether you're going for coffee or to chapel, right? And Dr. Bryson was kind and patient and very spiritual about it, and day after day he would answer the question and then head out the door to chapel. One day, I think Dr. Bryson had had all he could stand, and his response that never left me. He said, "Well, gentlemen, I'm pretty sure God will be there." We never asked again. But I made a commitment in my seminary career to be in chapel. If it was at all possible, if I was here, to be here, because I believed, Dr. Bryson, that God would be here. And I'm telling you, that was true. And God is still here. I walked the campus on Monday night when I arrived. It was dark, it was late, no one was out, me and the Lord. And He reminded me of all those memories and all the times where He and I met together on this campus and in this room. I met with God. So thanks for being here today. I'm grateful to have the chance to address you and speak to you. And you have your Bible? That's where we're going to hear from God today. The text is Matthew chapter 5. And if you will, turn to verse 13. And while you're turning, let me just say once again, thanks to Dr. Kelly. I came to the seminary with my wife to visit on our way to Southwestern on the old seminary tour. Happened to go to New Orleans First Baptist Church that Sunday morning. The preacher was out of town. Dr. Kelly was filling in. I didn't know. But when he finished preaching that day, I said, "We're coming here. This is where God's calling me. I want to study under that guy." So thanks for Dr. Kelly's influence on my life and leadership. Dr. Nix, Dr. Rudkowski, good friends, thank you for the invitation, faculty and staff. Just thanks for the privilege and the opportunity to preach here today. Lord knows I wanted to get out of preaching this message. I wanted to preach one of those good old soul-winning motivational sugar sticks, you know, that I took notes on from Don Wilton here in seminary years ago. I really wanted to. I've got all the right jokes in all the right places, and I know exactly every turn and every pitch of the message, but God just has not released me in the last 3 or 4 months from something that has been happening in our community and in my life and in my ministry. So I'm going to share with you today a bit from the overflow of God's activity in my life and hope it'll be a blessing to you. I suppose there's a reason you're here today. In God's sovereignty, He knows. So as we read this, look at these words and just see what God has to say. Verse 13, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven." I know New Orleans has faced a series of storms. Of course, the storm of 5 years ago, and then the storm out in the Gulf with the Gulf oil spill and its impact and influence here on the world, the society, the economy, and such as that. We've been facing storms, but storms of a different kind. We're also on the Gulf, as you know, and we face some of those storms from the Gulf, but we've been battling and fighting and holding on in a different kind of storm. It's a storm of a spiritual nature. Houston's known for a lot of great things, like the Rockets and, well, maybe the Astros. We're known for the Astros, yes, and NASA and great museums and wonderful entertainment. awesome things happen in Houston. But let me tell you what we've become known as and for in this recent year. We elected our first gay mayor in Houston this year. We opened the world's largest abortion clinic in Houston this year. We battled the economy, we battled the environment, we battled spiritual decay and the decline of the church. We're battling an exploding population of extreme diversity, and yet watching the number of committed Christians decline and the number of thriving and growing churches decrease. I was watching an interesting conversation recently. Somebody was talking about how bad things were, and the comment was made, it's going from bad to worse. Recently we discovered in Houston we are now the hub of human trafficking in America today. From bad to worse, he said. And his conversation buddy said, yeah, but what are you going to do? And that stuck with me. Things are going from bad to worse. Yeah, but what are you going to do? And in that statement, there was a sense of defeat and despair and throwing your hands up and giving up and walking away. I've been trying to answer that question. Things are seemingly going from bad to worse, and what are we going to do? Well, I'll make a few suggestions. Maybe we should bury our heads in the sand and ignore it and pretend it's not happening, and maybe it'll go away. The culture wars in Houston and New Orleans and across America and to the ends of the earth. Maybe if we just ignore it, it'll go away. Maybe it'll heal itself. Maybe it'll just resolve itself. Maybe we could run and hide, build a cabin in the woods and isolate ourselves and just hold out until Jesus comes back. Maybe we can just sit around with our Christian buddies and complain about it and find somebody to blame for it. Things are going from bad to worse, and what are you going to do about it? I'd like to make a few serious suggestions, if I might. And just to encourage us to think about what we're going to do about things going from bad to worse. Let me make this, and perhaps we should accept our responsibility as Christian Americans. Emphasis on Christian Americans. We read in Matthew chapter 5 that we are the salt of the earth. I don't have time, Dr. Kelly, to do deep exegesis. Not that I'm qualified to do that. I don't have time to talk to you about all the ramifications of that statement. You are the salt of the earth, but you know good food and you know when it's salty and when it's not. You know what salt is and what it does. It preserves and it seasons and it enhances and it influences and it changes. Salt is an ingredient, and ingredients by necessity must be in. Salt is of no value or worth in the cupboard. Salt has to be in the stew to be salt. It's by nature an influencer and an agent of transformation. You are light, the Bible says. And light by nature shines and drives back the darkness. Who in the world would turn on a light and then cover it? What's the point of that? That's pointless. That makes no sense. Light by its very nature is to shine. And the Scripture tells us, Jesus reminds us, you as Christians are agents of transformation. You are influencers in your society. You're there to make a difference, to use your influence, whatever influence you have, for good, to speak on behalf of God, to say a good word about Jesus, to champion the kingdom and the causes, and to stand on biblical convictions. That's our responsibility in America today, folks. That's why we're here. That's what we're supposed to do. And I'm proud to be an American. Me and Lee Greenwood are. I'm proud to be an American, and I'm grateful to be a citizen of the United States of America. But I want to remind us today that we have a citizen in a higher kingdom. We are citizens of God's kingdom. We have responsibilities that extend beyond our responsibilities to the appropriate God-given authority on earth as our government. We have a responsibility to God to be salt and light, agents of change and transformation in what seems to be a decaying society. Why decaying? Where's the salt? Why growing darker by the day? Where's the light? Maybe I could suggest today that we accept our responsibility as Christian Americans and use whatever influence we have to make a difference in this world. Last Tuesday night, Beverly and I had the privilege to have a quiet, intimate meal with Governor Mike Huckabee. Me and Beverly and about 2,000 other close friends at a fundraising event for a political action committee or something of that nature. But it was an honor to meet the man. I did hear one troubling thing while I was there. Do you know that 50% of Christians are actually registered to vote? And of that 50%, only half actually do. Where's the salt? Where's the light? And why would we think we should have the right to sit around and complain and blame when we ourselves, as salt and light, are hiding out in the cabinet or covering our candle with a bushel? I can't resist the urge. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Help me out, seminary. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine. Come on, get your finger up. I'm going to let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. You can do the rest of the verses over lunch or in your carpool home. That's our job. That's our Christian responsibility. God expects us to make a difference in this world. Not hide from it, run from it, or ignore it, or hope it goes away, but to change it. By very nature, that's our responsibility. Let me make a second suggestion. Perhaps we should accept our responsibility, and perhaps we should exercise our rights as American Christians. Emphasis here on American. Now, this is no time for a history lesson, and there are far more qualified people than me to teach you American history. But let me serve as a simple reminder to us here this morning that this is America, and we're still free in America. Those of you and us who have the privilege to travel occasionally and go to places where you have to watch what you say and to whom you say it are thankful that we still have in America the freedom to speak according to our convictions. Now, everything we say ought not be said, but some things certainly ought to be said that we are not saying. And I tell you what concerns me just a bit, folks. The godless seem to have found their voice and are exercising their rights. And the godly have lost their voice and surrendered their rights. We are still Americans, even though we are conservative, evangelical, Southern Baptist Christians. We are still Americans, and we still have the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. It's an American thing. And it's not a new thing. I came across an article in the Oklahoma State paper, the Baptist Messenger. I've ordered the book. The author, the editor is referencing. It didn't come in time for me to share it with you here. But Yale University historian Harry S. Stout identified the dominant influence in colonial New England as the local church. In his book, and here's the title if you'd like to get it, The New England Soul, Preaching and Religious Culture in New England, he reveals that the local pastor wielded great authority in the early communities across America precisely because his sermons were heard and later read as authority incarnate. The preaching of the text of the Bible was often so powerful that no one could escape the gaze of a penetrating and deeply practical challenge from the pastor. Sermons were regarded as vital for spiritual enlightenment and, quote, social meaning and order. Stout states that for the early Puritans, purity, power, and liberty constitute a sacred trinity of thought and action. Each depended on the other, balance and for meaning. Listen to this. Most pastors were trained at Harvard or Princeton and were consulted in their communities on spiritual matters, to be sure, but they were also voices of information and help on matters of economics, politics, and social thought. George Whitefield was an influence in the fabric of the American dream. And so many other preachers and ministers exercised a precious right to the American colonialists to speak their convictions and to influence the conversation and to bring about change in their society. Where has that freedom gone? Well, I'll tell you this. The last time I read the Bible, I've discovered we still have the responsibility. And thank God, in reading the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, we still have the freedom, a role to play and the right to play it. Maybe we should exercise that right. Now, if you take my first two suggestions and run with them, that we have a Christian responsibility as Americans and we have an American right as Christians, a role to play and a right to play it, then I've got to give you one more thing. Maybe we'll have to strengthen our resolve in the playing of our role and the meeting of our responsibility. Strengthen our resolve. And real quickly in the time I have remaining, I want to share with you now some of the overflow from this conversation as I've been involved in it these last several months in Houston. I call this a big bag of clubs, C-L-U-B-S, that I've discovered is used by the opposition to beat us into silence and submission. These are not going to surprise you. You've been beaten by these too. Like this one, for example. How about this club? What about the separation of church and state? When an article appears in the Houston Chronicle or any other magazine, something is said by some preacher somewhere in some pulpit, and it makes it to the news, the response is amazing. Of how many people out there say, what are these preachers doing in politics? Whatever happened to separation of church and state? Well, that's one thing for an unsaved, irreligious, ungodly world to say, stay out of politics. But you know what Mike Huckabee told us last Tuesday night? Get this. Governor Huckabee said that his greatest opposition came and comes from people who walk up to him and say first, now I just want you to know I'm a Christian, but. Now how many of you know that's never a good thing? But I didn't vote for you, Governor Huckabee. I would never vote for you. You're a preacher and you should stay out of politics. In this country, we have separation of church and state. For crying out loud, I don't blame the enemy for trying to take preachers out of politics, but the body of Christ is denying the voice in the pulpit and of the Christian themselves in the pew to speak into our society a word of influence under this misguided notion of a separation of church and state. Listen, I don't know about you, and I'm no historian, and I'm certainly no attorney, but I don't read it that way, and nor do those that I listen to are proposed experts. They don't read it that way. It's not separation of church and state. It's separation of state from church. And it's not separation of state from church. It's for church. Now, the government should not have on us a state religion. We all understand that, right? Nod like this if you understand. We get that. That's part's easy. But it doesn't flow the other way. To say that it does flies in the face and is contrary to every notion of every colonial understanding of what it means to possess the right of free speech and to be able to speak according to our convictions, though they be biblical and faith-based. Of course we must speak. There is no such thing as separation of church and state that affects a preacher who speaks according to his spiritual, godly, biblically based convictions and brings about influence and change. I'm so grateful for the pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, who later became the pastor with his father at the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia, a Baptist preacher with a theology degree, who had a deeply held biblical, spiritual, religious, yet with long-reaching and deeply controversial political implications. Have you figured out by now this preacher's name is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Can you imagine if the opponents of today had been around in his day and had somehow managed to silence the preacher and keep the preacher out of politics? What if he'd kept his dream within the four walls of the church? But here is a man who was willing to lay it on the line because he had certain convictions with political implications. Separation of church and state? No, thank you. Tell them to put that club back in the bag. You're not going to bow down to that anymore. Here's another club. Let me try this one on you. How about this? Here's this one. I get this. You're going to lose your tax-exempt status club. Have you heard that one? I was in another church, Dr. Kelly, not my church. Thank goodness when I talk about this in my church, they stand and applaud. I'm home. They love me and I love them. It works. I wish every pastor had a congregation like mine that would release him in the Lord to be faithful to his convictions and to the Scripture. In another church I was preaching, I didn't intend the message to be political. I don't even remember what the message was, but when I came off the platform, a sweet little old Baptist lady came up and put her finger in my face and she said, "Preacher, you better watch your politics." She didn't believe that religion and politics should mix, mainly probably because she didn't agree with what I said. It's amazing, when they agree with what you say, they're happy for you to say it. "Preacher, you better watch your politics," she said. "You're going to mess around and cost us our tax-exempt status." I said, "Thank you for your concern. I just want you to know I'm a professional. And I'm an American. And I know my responsibilities before God, and I know my rights as a citizen of this nation, and I'm not in danger of violating those rights or the law. I'm wise enough and trained and equipped enough here by some of you professors that I love and respect to know how to do my homework and know what the law says a preacher can do legally. And issue advocacy is absolutely legal." Now, I'm not advocating you advocate a candidate or support a candidate or endorse a candidate. That wouldn't be smart, even if it was legal. I think it was my grandfather who told me to be careful which mule you hook your wagon to. So I'm not advocating candidacy and endorsement. But I'm telling you this much is true. There are issues with moral, spiritual implications that we must speak to and can. There are lots of websites you can go to, the ADF, Alliance Defense Fund. There are Pastor's Bill of Rights that will help you understand what your rights are, what you can and cannot do. I would never advocate you break the law to the least degree, but know the law so that you can exercise your God-given American rights with responsibility. Having said that, let me say this. If it ever comes down to it, if it ever changes, if it ever comes down to it, listen, you can have our tax-exempt status. You can have it. I don't work for the IRS. You cannot buy our silence. We will not sacrifice our convictions on the altar of tax-exempt status. We're not going to be quiet. And you cannot use a club called separation of church and state, or you're going to lose your tax-exempt status. We have the privilege and the freedom to speak to the issues of the day, all day, every day, and it's a little bit overdue in America today. Quickly, a few more clubs. How about this club? Have you been hit with this one? The You're Intolerant Club. Have you gotten that one? You are so intolerant. Briefly, I'd like to just suggest that we've tolerated quite a bit, actually, and continue to do so. We've tolerated the removal of prayer and God's Word from our schools. We've tolerated the removal of religious symbolism from the public, 10 Commandments from the courthouses. We've tolerated quite a bit, actually. We've tolerated the rise of hedonism and secularism and humanism and atheism and a whole bunch of other isms. We've tolerated a lot. We've even tolerated the repositioning of sexual immorality. What used to be sin is now in. We've tolerated that. I tell you, when it comes to this whole tolerance issue, I just wish we could get a little tolerance for our religious beliefs, convictions. How about this club, the fourth? Who do you think you are, club? Who are you to judge? Isn't it funny that the opponents of free speech and religious influence have memorized the Scriptures? And their favorite verse is, judge not. I just wish they'd take a seminary course on biblical interpretation and understand. But that's a side issue. They never will, so perhaps we shouldn't hold out hope for that. Let me just say, I'm perfect. Never will be. I'm not qualified to be a judge, yours or anyone's. But I can tell you this. There is a judge. He most certainly has an opinion. And he's written his opinion in the Word. May I take a few moments as his messenger, his ambassador, his witness, to tell you what he thinks. I'm not your judge. I'm nobody's judge. Here's the last. How about the can't we all just get along club? You know where I get that a lot? At church. I loaded up and preached a series this summer on the hottest topics in America today. And I'm telling you right now, I didn't want to do it. I just wanted to have a fun summer. I wanted to have an easy summer. I just wanted to love on the people and encourage them and bless them and say nice things to and about them. But God put me on and I couldn't let it go. Preacher, why do you want to be so divisive? Can't we all just coexist? Can't we all just be happy monkeys in the barrel? Can't we all just get along? Well, let me say that Christians should never be rude, abrasive, unkind, or unchristian in any way, ever. Deep convictions is no excuse for rudeness or hatefulness. But those who don't want to rock the boat would have us believe that we can beat the devil through silence and submission and just going with the flow. Let me tell you something. That dog didn't hunt in 1776. When those folks had had enough, they stood up and were counted. They spoke up and were heard. They became agents of influence and transformed the world. Many of those based on religious convictions, yet with political implications. It's attributed to Edmund Burke. I don't know if anybody knows who said it, but all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Well, put those clubs back in the bag. And let me close the message this morning with a little history. In the early days of the church, I'm going to go on this side so Dr. Kelly can see. In the early days of the church, you know, a persecution erupted. Intense. Scattered the church. God used it. Turned out to be a good thing. But the persecution wasn't a good thing if you were one of those facing the potential of persecution. It wasn't a good time to exercise your convictions or to pretend you had rights, because you didn't. You had the right to die. The church had to do what they had to do, and what they did was they came up with a code. And Lord help me now as I'm about to try to do something in Greek in a seminary. You should not do this. But they came up with something, and you've probably seen this. You may have it on a shirt that you wear. It's a code. Well, not really. Really, it's the word fish. Fish. And there was a symbol associated with it. And it was code for, I'm one of those. Shh. I'm one of those. One would make this and the other make that. They would come to agreement. No, they were both one of those, and then they could talk. Here's the dangerous part. It's more than a word. It's an acrostic, and each letter, it's a word that forms a message. Iota, chi, theta, upsilon, sigma. First letter of the word, Jesus Christ, God's Son, Savior. Do you know what this was? This was code for the gospel. Jesus saves. Now, I'm not judging these poor persecuted people. They had something we don't have: intense persecution and the threat, real threat of death. We don't. I'm not judging these people. We have something they didn't have. It's called the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment. And do you know what that means? This means we don't have to hide in caves and write in codes and speak in secret. This means we have the right, Americans, to honor our responsibility as Christians. So we must strengthen our resolve and come out of the closet. What we need today, and why I come to you with this challenge today, is more of you and me out there who accept our God-given responsibility to be salt and light and to make a difference in our world. We need more of you and me out there exercising our right as Americans to speak according to our convictions, a word from God with the Word of God in our hand that no church member or ungodly neighbor down the street could ever silence or threaten us for. What we need is people like you and me who will strengthen our resolve. Be with whatever club you want, friend. I will never shut up. I will never sit down. I will never go away. Things are going from bad to worse. What are you going to do about it? Lord, what are we going to do about it? What will we do? Let's stand up and be counted, speak and be heard, use our influence, make a difference, shape our society, fight for what is right. What will we do? I charge you, therefore, before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who will judge the living and the disappearing in His kingdom, preach the word. Be instant in season and out of season, convince, rebuke, exhort with all longsuffering and teaching. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires, because they have itching ears, they will heap up for themselves teachers, and they will turn their ears away from the truth and be turned aside to fables. But you be watchful in all things, endure afflictions, do the work of an evangelist, fulfill your ministry. It is our responsibility we should. It is our right we can. May it be our resolve we must. God, help us. Help us, Lord, to change this world for the sake of Christ and the kingdom and for souls. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. Thank you for the opportunity.